I told them, they gave me a really big sheet here. I promise I'm not going to read it all, because you really don't want to listen to me. But Neil is a Michigan native, and he has about 30 years of experience in nonprofit and for-profit arts experience. He has actually graduated from our College of Fine Arts in 1978 with a major in theater, concentrations in performance and directing, a minor in dance. And then he did graduate work at the School of Art Institute of Chicago's Master of Arts program in Arts Administration. He has been in theater productions here in town and probably other places. He actually joined Kalamazoo community, or at least became the executive director of the Arts Council in May of just this past year, so he's relatively new in that role. For over 10 years, he was leading a mid-sized art museum in the Chicago suburbs. He has much experience in the arts and in a wide variety. And in our little visit, we were talking about arts and business together, which there's a lot of roles, some overlap that we don't always think about. He's been a visiting professor. What haven't you done?
Well, anything I've been convicted for.
Oh. Well, so anyway, join me in welcoming Neil Bremer.
Well, good morning. I have this image in my head that there's a business school inviting an arts guy to come to talk, and everybody thinks they're going to come and look at pictures of flowers or something. And I'm not that kind of guy. This is a pretty special thing that's done, and I get to work with Tom on the Epic Center board. He serves on the board of the Epic Center, and is one of those reasoned voices in the midst of a nonprofit board conversation. And so that's terrific that you do that. Keystone makes us possible. Yeah, I don't perceive myself as a typical arts guy, even though it's been my entire life. Just out in the hallway, I'm talking with Shauna, and I mentioned the fact that I love coming back to Michigan because I'm a bow hunter. But in the arts world, you can't even say that out loud. Because they look at you and think you're a Neanderthal because you enjoy going out in the woods and bow hunting. And I spent a couple weekends out since I was back here and didn't see a thing. It's still the best hours I'd spent, so that was okay. People have asked me during these last, 8 months now. I feel like I'm 5 months behind where I should have been by now with the Arts Council. So people ask me, how's it like? How's it been so far? And I have to respond back, how much time do you have? Because the things I discovered once I arrived were surprising to me. The answer is complex because I think the Arts Council here in Kalamazoo is complex. It has this mission to improve the cultural life. Can you see that over there okay? I can tend to block an entire screen for a half of an audience. It's not that funny. To improve the cultural life in Greater Kalamazoo, that's a heck of a big promise. That we're going to improve the cultural life for everybody in Kalamazoo. But that's how they wrote it. And it's demanding. So we're talking about painting and theater and dance and music and sculpture and the literary arts and architecture and design. All of these things that the creative arts contribute to in our society. And I've run into conversations since I've been here where some people will say, I don't know where we'd be without the Arts Council. And then I've run into other folks who look me in the eye and go, well, I don't know if the Arts Council went away next week, whether I'd even notice. Those are the people that tend to worry that the Arts Council might actually go out and try to raise some funds. And I have been told, the Arts Council shouldn't be raising any money, shouldn't be fundraising. you will compete directly with the very arts groups you serve. What, we're the Fed? I'm just going to roll it off a press? How do you do this? We don't have a tax base. Of course we're going to fundraise. So it's a challenge. I've visited other arts groups around Michigan and other arts councils and alliances and in other states. And there's an interesting element here to Kalamazoo, which, as I've spent time, seems fitting. There are some groups who exist just to serve arts groups, symphonies, theaters, dance organizations. There are some alliances and councils out there who are formed just to serve individual artists, the painter, the actor, the dancer. And then there are some groups who serve the community at large. They might be called an arts council or an arts alliance. And what they really do is they put on 2 great big festivals every year, or something of that nature. And they serve the community at large. And then you have Kalamazoo. And Kalamazoo has a little chip on its shoulder about arts and culture. And you know what? I've got the same chip on my shoulder. I left school here in the 70s, and I would talk about Kalamazoo. I went on to Chicago, and Chicago is a city rich with culture and art and architecture. But I always was proud of Kalamazoo, proud that I went here to school. Moving back 34 years later, I'm kind of blown away. It's more than I expected. Kalamazoo is a city that has arts leaders who are passionate, good and thriving arts groups. They have some generous people and foundations in this town. But more than that, they have a community that shows up. They attend the events. You go to a Sunday concert in Bronson Park, and they're all there with the lawn chairs. I actually got in trouble because I have to welcome the Sunday concerts, so I'll walk up and say, welcome to Bronson for the Sunday concerts of the park. And my fiance and I had our lawn chairs. I walked up and did the gig, and there wasn't a concert the following week, so I was reminded to tell them it'll be 2 weeks before the next concert. So I don't know why, but I just went with it. I went, I understand there isn't a concert next week, but you're all invited to come and bring a dish to pass anyway. I went back to the lawn chair, and Sandy says to me, she goes, oh, that was great. Over here, there's like, Margaret, bring your 3-bean salad. The Arts Council's going to get all these phone calls going, we were in the park, but there was nothing going on. So I have to watch myself a little bit. I think the difficulty is we're called to do all of this. I knew the Arts Council had struggled in years past. Wow, I didn't know how much and what had come of that struggle. Part of it is we're formed at a certain size, told we're not supposed to fundraise, but we need to do this. So guess what? We just end up disappointing somebody in each one of these groups because we can't get it done. So if we're supposed to serve these 3 constituent groups, and that's the Arts Council, but we're not supposed to fundraise, then this is what we have to do. Cut 1/3 off the Arts Council so that we can exist with what we are able to raise, and then something's got to give up on the top. Probably more than one. Or we have to take that Arts Council, we have to build capacity so that we're able to meet that mission. That's what I didn't know I would be doing when I got here. I thought I would be refining an organization and helping it succeed. I got here and we had to completely rebuild accounting systems, whole new charts of accounts. Nonprofit accounting is not the simplest kind of accounting out there to track restricted funds separate from unrestricted and to show it on a report. So we have to rebuild some of these internals before we're relevant to anybody on the outside. You know, of these groups we serve, they all have different needs. I do know this, that mediocrity is not going to be an acceptable kind of performance for the Arts Council. We can't just kind of help each of these groups. Artists have their own demands. There's individual artists who are looking at an Arts Council to provide opportunities and an environment that fosters creativity. We're helping a little bit, but not enough. And that's why I say enough already. It's time to start. The first week I was here, a lady came into my office the first week and introduced herself. She was a visual artist, a painter, and proceeded to tell me that my job was to go across the street to the Gazette to tell them they needed to give more coverage to artists when they have shows. I thought, well, okay. We haven't even begun to discuss theater and dance and music and all the other art forms, or the fact that the whole concept of print media is changing in this country and all over the world. But that's kind of the attitude many of the creative types have. Sometimes artists can be some of the whiniest people you'll ever work with. And I listen, I do listen, and I realize why they want it so badly. But we have to actually be of some sort of value. So part of what we're going to do for artists is we are endeavoring now to enter into a new era where they all have a free membership of the Arts Council. If we're truly here to serve artists, then you get to be a member of the Arts Council for free. If you want certain sets of services that are more involved, then there can be a tiered paid membership above. But we can't say we're here to serve you and then, oh, unless you pay, you don't get anything from us. I think there's an idea of being of service. It's going to be interesting because I think we can help, and this is where I think about the business school. And the dean and I had a brief conversation in the hall. I am constantly telling young people, students, artists who are painters, dancers, actors, you don't get to just do the fun stuff. You don't get to just paint. You don't get to just act. You have to take care of the business of your career. You have to understand the skills to manage a career. You have to learn how to network, work a room, make small talk so that you actually can get the word out and meet people. Those are skills that I think we need to be teaching. I think that there's some way the arts and the business school can come together to work on those presentation skills, small talk, and how to work a room. Because those are things you don't just take a class in. You know what's interesting is when I graduated Western, there wasn't a school of fine arts. So I graduated with a communications degree. Which when you're in theater, they go, really, communications? Didn't you have a BFA in theater? But let me tell you, saying communications instead of theater helped me get other work on my resume. As long as I didn't say theater, people would look at my resume. But the communications are a big part of it. I think we can do that. And I think artists need help because frankly, we all know that sometimes working with artists is like herding cats. They're just all over the map. And it can be difficult. And I have to point out, in case you don't know, my favorite is the bottom left. That's Cat Stevens' theme. The community is a part of the Arts Council's purview. We do things that the community attends, that the community enjoys. And we offer that programming because there's funding in place to do it. One of the reasons we do that is not every good new idea demands the formation of a brand new 501c3. That's making this town crazy. Every great new idea, let's get a board, let's try to get fundraising together, and then the first thing I do is go over to Gilmore and say, we need to buy a building. It happens over and over and over. So the Arts Council takes on programming where there are people in place and a program in place that doesn't need an entire new organization. You know, part of what I find myself frustrated with and want to say enough already is to help advocate for arts for all. And arts groups tend to just tell you really loudly, support the arts, they're important. And then when you don't listen, they just say it again louder. They're important. And after a while, it's sort of like eat your broccoli. It's good for you. And because you tell a kid your broccoli's good for you, doesn't make kids jump on the broccoli bandwagon and start eating it. But in the arts, we keep doing this. It's important. You need to do it. Part of what we have to think about is the audience might not be paying attention. We keep reminding them how special we are. And this is coming from a guy who genuinely believes they are critical to the quality of our life. The arts are special, but I'm not going to get you to believe me if I just keep yelling at you and saying they're important. You know, I wrote a business piece for DuPage County, which is a thriving business community west of Chicago. And in that piece, I talked about we have to help businesses and individuals realize it's not a zero-sum game. When there's only so much money and ability to support, it feels like I need to decide between human and social services or the arts. How do you make an argument for arts in the face of helping the poor or the sick? It's kind of difficult. The arts feel like this luxurious add-on. And I can tell you how creativity helps students learn, how creativity is in all of our lives every day, and it's true, but we don't feel it necessarily. I will say this, we could take 100% of our generosity and only support the poor or the sick. The reason we do that is to lift them up into society, to give them some sense of footing. But if once they get there, the arts aren't thriving, that's a pretty gray container for life. There isn't a whole lot happening once they get there. It isn't zero sum. It's both at the same time. And in my mind, if a corporation or an individual or a foundation can't add, then there still needs to be this sense of helping all of society, which means there is a piece for all of those needs. You know, many times this is how we come across. We're looking for your donations and your support, just because it helps us continue to afford to ask you for your donations and your support. Particularly in Kalamazoo, the mail you must go through. Tom, how many pieces would you open in a month? You know?
Probably 1 or 2 a day at least.
1 or 2 a day. Okay, throw them all away unless they say Arts Council.
Okay.
Actually, I've already got you set up with direct deposit. So. I think to help the Arts Council, we need to make that a strong business internally. Then we can advocate for arts. Arts groups are that other constituent group. These are these great organizations already here in town and are thriving. I just last night went to the Wellspring fundraiser, which was the chocolate soiree. My date was our 11-year-old because there was chocolate in the name of the fundraiser, so that all worked just fine. It's a lot of work. We don't get to make widgets and then try to keep our costs down and then see how we can convince people they need more widgets in their lives. We have to go out and ask for funding. All of the arguments now about, oh, the NEA is threatened in humanities and federal funding. For many arts groups, they're not touched by some of that federal money. It's always here that helps in the most intimate way. So I talk with arts leaders now here in town, and they're concerned about the 40 and under crowd. And that's a genuine concern. You know what they're finding out is it's been for decades when people hit about 45 years old, the kids have grown up, they start attending symphonies and theater again. That percentage every year is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. They're not doing it anymore. That predictable bump in attendance isn't as dependable any longer. Part of what happens is it's technology and the way we access the arts. I'm the first to grow up in a TV generation. So we had the black and white set with about 3 stations, maybe 4 if you didn't mind not really seeing it. I remember watching the Beatles on Ed Sullivan sitting in the living room. I still will watch, God, I can't believe I'm saying this out loud. Sandy and I will flip past, and if there's Lawrence Welk or an Ed Sullivan or something, we'll watch some of it because we remember seeing it. That was how things began to change, about access, the merging of a popular culture and a sense of art and culture. I have a 22-year-old son who's the first to grow up in the computer generation. And for him, life is very different. The options for filling his leisure time have increased dramatically, and that changes a family's choices about what they do. I'll tell you, if you write anything down, write this word down, plenitude. It's a book that you can get online and search for and download. It's just free and available on the internet. And I met this cat up at the Royal Ontario Museum years ago as a social anthropologist. And he wrote this book called Plenitude, and it talks about this continuing fragmentation in our society. So when I was a kid and a group of people got together and you only got 3 channels, you picked one of them. The group decided, okay, maybe not really what I want to watch, but we'll do this. Nowadays, there are hundreds of channels with nothing on. People expect their individual choices met. They expect it. When I was a kid, there was Look, Life, Time. Now you walk into a Barnes & Noble, and there will be 3 rows of shelves on just one hobby of periodicals. The fragmenting of our society impacts all of us, business as well as the arts. You try to come up with that product, and you find that more and more it's these smaller segments that you can hit right away. People nowadays, this young man here at the journalism school for the Herald interviewed me about this breakfast, and then he called me back and said he had to do a paper on a profile and decided he wanted to talk to me a little more, and we spent some time talking about it. And here he is going to journalism, and look how that's changing. Just because you have an opinion and you know how to put it on the internet, it's valid now. It's called blogging. What's this do to the arts? You know, consider Fathom events. If you've gone to a movie theater and you watch the trailers, which sometimes are my favorite part of going to a movie, are the trailers, you'll see one of these sooner or later, and they'll talk about the Met in high def at that movie theater. Well, it began in 2002. It was just a couple of events in just a handful of theaters. It was a test. Last year, the Met had on-site ticket sales of about 800,000, and they added to that just over 2.4 million tickets for live and repeat broadcasts. And the handful of theaters in 2002 turned into over 1,400 theaters around the world. 100,000 people attended the live broadcast of Carmen in January of last year. And you know what people love too is there'll be clips about the backstage. They're in that inner circle of the artists. They love that sense of being included. We don't do that in many of our institutions. We tend to say, here's the temple, come and see what creative people do. You sit up there. It's changing for people. I'm concerned we may not be able to compete if we don't think about this. I've often said the arts are great at content. We're pretty poor at delivery. We're delivering it in the same way we always have. So, at the same time that arts leaders in Kalamazoo are telling me we're seeing this slight shrinkage in our audiences, the Met in the last 5 years, via this technology, has increased over 300%. And that's called a trend. And I see it not changing. It's not going back. Whatever we want, it's not going back. Last year when I lived in Louisville for 1 year, after I left Chicago, before I came here. Oh, and let me tell you, the city of Louisville doesn't compete with Kalamazoo, with how much Kalamazoo offers. Louisville has a rich culture as well, much bigger. Can't match Kalamazoo. Sandy and I'll get home on a Thursday, we'll pour a glass of wine and we'll say, okay, let's do it. We'll open the ticket in the Gazette and go, okay, let's just do theater. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, now let's just do the music events this weekend. 1, 2, 3, 4. I wonder how it's supported, but it is. Kalamazoo embraces it. It's something to be so proud of compared to anywhere in this country. So last year I'm in Louisville, and we're going to take our 10-year-old at that time and 2 of her friends to the Indianapolis Children's Museum, which is arguably the best children's museum in the country. It's 90 minutes away. For 90 minutes, the 3 of them sat in the back seat of my truck and texted each other. And they'd laugh, and then they'd swap phones and continue to text each other. That was fun. That's what they enjoyed doing. We, in our age group, can laugh at it. I see some folks here in my age group, a little older, just not even laughing, going, oh my God. But this is reality. This is what's happening. By the way, neither of these is our daughter. The world is continuing to change, and I think that the Arts Council's greatest effort will be working with arts groups to embrace this. Do you know, I imagine this, I call this place the greatest petri dish in the country. We've got a business community that makes Southwest Michigan and Kalamazoo thrive. We've got arts leaders and great arts groups. We have an audience that shows up. We've got a student body next to none. We, as a community, should try some grand experiment. Even if we don't succeed, imagine what happens when people around the country say, you gotta look what this Kalamazoo's doing. They're trying. I think we could tell the rest of the country how the arts can embrace an audience. Because it's changing. We used to attend events. Now, we have them in the palm of our hand. Pandora, digital music, right there. You don't have to go out and dig through the CDs anymore. Netflix. Did anybody in this room ever think Blockbuster would conceivably go out of business? That's preposterous. Do you know, I've got a great flat screen LED at home. I can just go right there, it's hooked to the internet, hit a button, go to Vudu, and it streams to my TV in the highest high def you can get. Think about 3D. We laugh at 3D. There are people here in this room, we're of the age where we remember the original 3D coming out. It was just ridiculous. You had a headache within 5 minutes of watching that stuff. Now, it's becoming how movies are released. You can get it on your TV at home. I don't want it for myself, but every time I see the ad for ESPN in 3D, I go, man, I should try that. I would love to watch a football game. And I'm still mourning the Bears, but it's, this, by the way, is Barry Ross. I photoshopped Barry Ross conducting a symphony up there in this little shot. This is what families can do and feel like they're embracing art and culture. You know, that's part of what I think the arts and the business community can work together to do. That we can be aware of the trend. We can start to study and make sure we are on top of this. You know, we combine all together between the leaders and the philanthropists and the students, and I think in there we have the answer. Since I've been here, I hear the word collaboration a lot. I find myself getting a little annoyed because to collaborate for the sake of collaboration is, let's all just play in the sandbox a little. What happens is you have different arts groups who struggle to get through their own seasons, trying to come up with a brand new program so they can collaborate. And they need to get through their own business. What we really need is let's share resources. Let's figure out a way that we can lift up and support each other. So enough already. The Arts Council could be the group that does this, and I really believe that. You know, human resource nonprofits, social services nonprofits, they focus outward. They collaborate easily because they help that end user. Arts groups focus this way, they go, look at what I made. Look what I can do. And they don't collaborate quite as easily. So when you see collaborations, when you see Western collaborating with arts groups, stop for a moment and realize that's not easy. It's an effort to make that happen with arts groups. It's why the word a few years back was coined co-opetition, because that's what they do. Arts groups do compete. They compete for, as they say, butts and seats. You're talking about theater and performances. You know, we've already entered into discussions with arts groups here. One of the things I see the Arts Council doing going forward is being that back of house, which is the business side of the arts. Arts groups struggle. Some of them will struggle to have a part-time accountant who leaves in a year to take another job, and then there's no institutional memory, and now you're starting all over again. An arts council that can partner with businesses in Kalamazoo to bring marketing and accounting and communications in these packages of services to the arts group gives them some stability that they can rely on year to year. I can see a menu of services, because one of the things I encountered is very different needs, small groups to large groups. That's obvious. They have different needs. Their problems are the same, there's just more zeros behind the big ones. They still struggle with capacity and the ability to pull off a great program. This is where we're headed. This is what my board has embraced, what the Gilmore Foundation has embraced, what we are headed towards, is coming up with a way to strengthen that part of an arts group that needs to be strong and dependable, so they get to do, guess what, the very thing I argue about, they get to do the fun stuff. We can help with that backup house.
Neil, I want to stop you there for a second, if I may.
Sure.
Because I will anyway. I've been so frustrated in this community with that fact, and the fact that you said earlier all these small organizations and groups have a great idea to form a 501c3. Then the other problem that happens is then they get a grant and have to do an audit because that's one of the requirements, and they don't have the capacity to do it. That, what you just put on the last screen, is genius. I've been saying that to a couple retired accounting buddies of mine, that they should be doing that, because they get so many businesses that they could help without duplicating. You know, nobody needs a full-time accountant if you're a small nonprofit. And that is a great concept. I hope you can really do it, because you help a lot of groups and save a lot of money, and probably have a lot less frustrated constituents who fund these groups always asking about this duplication of service.
But, and I need to be clear that I didn't just dream this up one.
Well, then I'll give Tom credit. Tom, great idea.
It is in practice in other parts of the country, but now I need everybody in the room. You did hear him say he and a couple pals were going to pro bono some accounting? Did you guys hear that?
No, I told them they should do that.
Aha, interrupt me again. I'm teasing. The community here, pretend I put the word business in that circle. We have to keep the arts strong. It's a quality of life. It's a strange animal, though, because here's Kalamazoo, one of the best places to see art and culture, to experience it. And then I can still see business partners or partners in economic development. And when it gets down to the close to try to bring that corporation. We've got hospitals and universities and, lots of arts. We can be doing better in the arts community. We need to be infiltrated into the work of the business community and economic development. Greg Ayers is here from Discover Kalamazoo. We've had conversations about the ways the arts community can really be integral to what the message is to people we want to convince to come to Kalamazoo. I've already had conversations with the dean about the idea of helping students understand the idea of persuasive speaking, communicating. You don't have to just go grab an actor and have him come in and do a crazy thing with all of the business students. It needs to be received. Sometimes even that can feel like this fun add-on. Oh, we had a creative person come in one day. It's got to be a little more subtle, more sophisticated. But the arts are in our community and our lives. It's what makes Kalamazoo a rich place. Your willingness and ability to even come out for a breakfast like this, can I tell you, when I grew up in Michigan, I don't ever remember hearing the term lake effect. Did they say that 30 years ago? It still happened 30 years ago, right? Hell, it's all lake effect. That's all I'm seeing since I've been here. I was on the other side of the lake before. I love it. I can remember Western in the 70s, it was a college you went to, they actually would cancel classes because there was so much snow you couldn't get to class, but everybody could get to a liquor store. I love it. I love this city. I love the people in this city, and I love what Kalamazoo is doing. Part of me thinks there's so much happening here. I just hope I don't screw it up. You have to be asleep at the wheel to mess this up. There's so much happening. And I appreciate you coming out in the morning to listen to somebody talk about the arts in a business school. So thank you. I'll take questions. You've already had yours.
I'll wait.
Go ahead. Yes, sir.
I'm currently board chair of a local chapter of a national nonprofit. Fundraising, which you mentioned, is always a very difficult issue, and particularly in this community when we feel another organization is fundraising for many different nonprofits. But again, their mission is changing, so how are you really addressing the fundraising issue? Because that's one that we're facing right now also. Doing it individually as opposed to collaborative or collectively.
There are a couple models out there. It just so happens in Louisville there is the Kentucky Fund for the Arts out of Louisville, and it's an interesting model. This collective of the large arts organizations, and they get a percentage of the amount raised every year, and then there's a percentage that goes to smaller groups. And I got to tell you, it's kind of a monster. There's this sense of all of the groups trying to work for their own survival, and then this huge rolling truck of a Kentucky Fund comes in, and I don't know if I have an answer. I do know that there are skills, there are strategies that I think each group has to adopt. Just yesterday I had a meeting with one of the small arts groups who had an idea of working with a legal and accounting firm wanted to come in and talk about, here are the laws about charitable giving, and it's typical, we see that a lot. They do that and hope to get clients, and they help the arts groups reach out to potential donors. And the idea started with, we could do this for everybody. We'll invite all the groups and get their boards together. I don't see it happening like that. If you're going to spend time, I advised her, focus on your organization. If you're going to do that, invite your board and the people who are close to your organization, because that's the most intimate kind of a message. Other than workshopping and helping organizations with the skills and strategies for fundraising, I'm not sure. What happens out across the country when there are organizations who do this back of house, here's what they find happens. Ticketing is the easiest one to get people all to embrace and get them together in a group. And then it's accounting and marketing. You can get groups to go, okay, well, let's work together. You start to get into fundraising, and then that co-opetition sets in. There are some systems I've learned that can help work together, but keep some segregation and some understandings of, once this donor buys a ticket to my organization, they are now fair game to receive information from us. But that's tricky to get people to kind of share that. And I worry about it here in Kalamazoo. I imagine that there are those of you who have the means to be generous, feel like you get nickel and dimed quite a bit, and everybody asking. But you know, without another system to fund, that's always going to be the case. Maybe I didn't answer, but that's the best I can do.
Kind of same direction I was moving, but they're suggested, so.
Yeah. You know, it's one of those things where you can care about other groups, but get good at taking care of yours.
In your pastor grants, how do you avoid picking winners and losers, doing the same old thing and forsaking the new technology or new arts?
When we re-grant, you mean, when the Arts Council re-grants? Since I've only been here through one grant cycle, the grants that the Arts Council gives are always conducted and measured by an independent panel. So I don't really have a say in terms of what the criteria is about technology, other than the fact that I intend to more and more speak about let's pay attention to organizations that are moving forward. I think the best thing, it probably won't come out of the re-granting, it'll come out of partnering and collaborating with existing organizations in town where we can try it. I imagine a scenario where we look at a future calendar of an arts calendar, and that we would work with Western and with the Civic and with the Symphony and say, let's just try it 2 years out, and let's cull out one performance or concert out of a season so it spreads from the fall to the spring, and let's deliver it a whole new way. I've already had conversations with Public Media Network, which is on the top floor of Epic, about taking a performance within the Epic Theater and seeking the funding so that we can simulcast that at 4 locations at the same time, so those kids who can't get the funding to leave their school to come to a performance, we'll take it to them, which is like the Metropolitan. I just have to get the money together to make it happen. But I think we put a performance on an Epic, and then you send those vans out strategically around Kalamazoo. Kids can go to the gym and feel like they're a part of it too. And for them, they'll enjoy it. It's not the real live performance, but you hook them. Maybe the next time they want to go to the performance. I think that's where it's going to happen, is collaboration.
Thank you.
Anything else? Thank you. Thank you.
We have some prizes here for you and a certificate of appreciation. We really enjoyed that.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Our next Keystone Breakfast is going to be on February 25th, and our speaker that day will be Tamara Davis. Tamara is actually sitting over here. Tamara is the regional director for the SBTDC, Small Business and Technology Development Center. And so I'm sure we'll learn a lot about what they do, what they offer here, their impact on economic development here in the region. So we look forward to that event, and we hope that we will see many of you back here again. So thank you, and have a great day.